Hey guys, Luna here with a new video for the channel. How you're doing today? Welcome to another review. Today is a turn for the legendary singer, composer, record producer, visual artist, pretty much everything you can do in terms of music, Brian Eno with his 28th studio album, FOREVERANDEVERNOMORE. This is his latest studio album, and the thing is that I was really excited for this release, pretty much because it was already teased with the singles that there was going to be a lot of vocal contribution for this album. This album is supposed to be like a soundtrack for the end of civilization, the end of the world. That's not how it was promoted, but that's pretty much what everyone knew it would be because of the lyrics, pretty much the song titles and everything surrounding the project as well. And I know that right away that title can be a little bit too pretentious, especially because we're talking about Brian Eno, one of the greatest ambient musicians of all time. And ambient music mixed with climate change and social awareness can be the recipe for a mess, or at least a really pretentious project. But in this album, Brian Eno doesn't really play the role of someone who's trying to lecture you into awareness in terms of climate change. Actually, the way he sounds and the way that this whole album sounds, it's almost like he is death itself, that's showing you how the world looks after the end of civilization. It's almost like someone from the future, or pretty much the last human on earth, showing you people from the present, what's gonna happen and how it's going to look like. There's never a point where someone is trying to bring awareness over anything. It's just pretty much, okay, we fucked it, this is what's gonna happen. The lyrics are really simple here. They're clearly not the main focus. Brian Eno uses more than anything the instrumental and the whole atmosphere of the album in order to communicate this message of awareness rather than using his words. If you sort of isolate the beautiful sparkly synths this album offers, the album can be quite beautiful, but when you add the drone, the bass and everything else onto the track, you really can feel a desolation and some sort of sadness in the whole thing, in the whole project, especially in the opening track, Who Gives a Thought. Also in the track We Let It In, or it can even be scary or disturbing, like in the track Garden of Stars, where not only the instrumental can be disturbingly dark, with this drones in the background joining in with Brian Eno's voice to create some really weird vocal effects that sort of seems like death itself is singing to you. Not really because of Brian's performance, because that's one of the low points in this album, I'll get to that a little bit later, but because of the whole track joining in with his voice, giving him that power. It's an amazing track, and actually one of the highlights on this album, if not the best track. One thing that I will add though about the instrumental is that pretty much every single track on this album shares a similar instrumental, actually extremely similar. It's often this formula with sparkly synths, really beautiful synths in this record, joined with some drums, bass line, and sometimes backing vocals. And even though that's true for most of his albums, we're talking about ambient music here, it's supposed to stay somewhat similar. I think this album overdoes it to the point where it's repetitive. I'm gonna tell you a little story. It's Tuesday now. I'm uploading this on Wednesday, probably, but it's Tuesday. And the reason why it took me so long to make the review of this album is because many times I fell asleep. I fell asleep listening to this album. I know that the way that Brian Eno sort of kind of describes the way that ambient music is supposed to be. It's a type of music that it's supposed, you can easily ignore it, but if you pay attention to it, it's interesting. That's the way that he describes how the music should be, ambient music should be. And it's true, that's basically what the music is. Many of my favorite atmospheric ambient albums of all time have this quality. I can put these albums whenever I'm in my car or studying or whatever, because it's not so overwhelming as the rest of the music where it has all these elements that are so loud and stuff. But if I pay attention to the track, it's interesting. I like what I'm hearing. It can grab my whole attention. But this album doesn't really do that. Actually, when you're paying attention to this album is often when you find all these different flaws. The main problem with this album is pretty much Brian's performance, and even though it's a really convincing performance, you can really tell that he put his heart and soul onto performing these tracks. We're talking about someone that isn't really a singer, or at least I've never seen him sing in such a high register or anything. And it's not that you need to sing that way. It's just that often gives you the ability to sort of change the pace of your performance. And that's something really important if you're looking to make an album interesting. Instead, most of the performances that Brian Eno, delivers on this album are quite similar, if not exactly the same. The only track that tries to do something different with the performance is the track Cherry, which it's basically not an ambient song like the rest of the album is. It's a ballad. It's a piano ballad. Another thing that bothers me about this album is, even though the instrumentals are beautiful and they really do paint the picture of, the end of the world, the end of civilization, the post-human Earth, let's say, I believe that often these tracks feel a little bit too short. That maybe if given more time to that track, the track would evolve into something more. It sort of feels like some of the tracks here, especially the opening track, or even the second to last track on this album, these small noises are only introductions to another track or another part of the track that it's cut out, that it never, you never quite reach it. So I kind of feel blue-balled by a lot of the songs here, because in other words, by Brian Eno, and I hate comparisons, but you just have to do them, he took a fair amount of time to sort of introduce you to a track, and then the track reaches a climax. It doesn't just stay there. That, along with the performance not being the greatest thing in the world, can sort of bring this album down after a few listens, because the first time then you're shocked, by the way it paints the end of the world, by the way it communicates it to you. You really do feel concerned about our future, as human race. But the second, third, fourth, and fifth listen, it's sort of like you start to see things that are easy to miss on the first listen, because you're too busy focusing on the principles of the album. Apart from that, you can only, praise Brian Eno for painting such a clear picture of, the way we're going in terms of us as human race, and what we're doing with the planet, and what we're doing with ourselves, really, usually with this nuclear wars just peeking around the corner, trying to hunt us and just fucking destroy civilization as we know it. And I think this is an album that can communicate this without trying to lecture you, counting it himself as part of the problem, and just trying to, you can tell that this comes from a position of someone who doesn't really know what to do, who doesn't really know how to help, someone that's just putting this album out to communicate that he is concerned. This is how he sees the future, and it's a pretty clear picture, and one that it amazed me at first glance. By no means this is a bad album. We're talking about Brian Eno, and if I'm being a little bit critical, it's because I know what the man is capable of. He has released some of my favorite albums ever, of all time. Brian Eno is a person that I hold in the peak of, of what a musician can achieve. So I do find myself being a little bit too critical about his work, because this is a really good album. This is a really interesting, thought-provoking album. I definitely do recommend for you to listen to this. This album was a step in the right direction. I like the fact that he contributed with the vocals. This album without the vocals would have been way worse, so I appreciate it. I do want to see more of this in the future, but more developed, more evolved, in a better way, with more layers, let's say. So yeah, in terms of rating, I'm giving this album a 7. That is it for today's video, guys. I really hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, go ahead and leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any other videos that I upload. I'm sorry if my voice was fucked during the whole video. I have a little bit of a flu right now. Excuse me, no COVID. If you have any album recommendations or any albums that you want me to review, leave it down below in the comments and I'll make sure to fulfill your request. With that being said, guys, all we can do is hope for another Brian Eno album. Let's see what the man has in store. He's a really constant, consistent musician. It is true that it's been like 5 years since he has released anything else, but we're talking about someone that has 28 studio albums with about 27 collaborative albums plus. So we have someone that's constantly releasing music. So let's see what the man has to offer in a near future. Once again, I really hope that you enjoyed it, and I hope that I can see you soon with a new video. But until then, bye.